guys, what's going on? It's Ben here, and today I'm going to be doing a video that I just thought of randomly that I thought would be kind of fun to do. I'm actually in a different location today. I'm at my house in my hometown, so that's why the background looks a little bit different. And I just sort of thought of this video idea on the fly and thought, why not do it? Let's go with it. So the video is going to be me covering some different players in the 2000s who I thought always should have made an all-star team but were never all-stars. And the reason I'm doing the 2000s and not a different era is because that's the era that I grew up on and I'm most familiar with, and I could do it in another decade. I would just have to research it a lot more to be really familiar with who should have made all-star teams and didn't. These are just a few that came off the top of my head and who I thought of, and so I'm going to go through each of the players, their career statistics, their best season that I think that they should have been an all-star, and the best team success that they ever had. So like if they ever won a championship, their stat line from that year. So getting into it, the first player I have is Corey Maggette. So the teams that he's most identified with are usually the Clippers or the Warriors, but he's played for a lot of teams. He's bounced around a lot since about 2010, but his career line is 16 points a game, 5 rebounds a game, and 2 assists a game. And his best year, his most all-star worthy year, came in 2004 to 2005 with the Clippers. And he played about 75 games, and he scored 22 points a game. He had 6 rebounds a game and 3 assists a game. So that's a pretty good line. And as far as the best team success he ever had in a season, he in 2005 to 2006 on the Clippers, they had 45 wins and got to the second round. And he had another good stat line where he scored about 18 points a game. And the reason I didn't make this his best season, where he should have been an all-star, was because he only played in about half the season. Actually, a little bit less. He only played in about 30 games. So I can't really say that that's his best season because he didn't do as well, even though his team overall did a lot better. Alright, so moving on from Corey, the next person I have is Mike Bibby. I like Mike Bibby a lot. I think he's a really good player in his time. His career stat line is 14.7 points a game, 3.1 rebounds, and 5.5 assists. And his best year came in 2004 to 2005. This was the year that the Kings traded away Chris Webber, and Vladdy was getting a bit older, and Peja was still good, but Mike Bibby was really seen as more of the second or first option instead of the third or fourth option like he was in the Kings' heyday. So this year his scoring went up to just a touch under 20 points a game at 19.6. He also had higher rebounds at 4.2 and career high in assists at 6.8. And so the year that he had the most team success was in 2001 to 2002 with the Kings, when they won 61 games, which was the best in the league, and they lost in the Western Conference Finals, but they probably should have won the title. And he scored 13.7 points a game in the regular season, but was a lot more important in the postseason because they were without Peja Stojakovic. So he was seen as basically the second option on the Kings behind Chris Webber that postseason. So the next guy I feel like is going to be one of the lesser known guys on this list who maybe doesn't have as gaudy of a stat line as some of the other ones could, but I think was really underrated and a really good player and contributed to a lot of good teams, but just gets lost in the shuffle a little bit when the conversation comes up about like good, really versatile players, and that's Al Harrington. Al Harrington, probably most memorable for playing on the Indiana Pacers or Hawks or Warriors in his prime. So his career stat line is 13.5 points a game, 5.6 rebounds, and 1.7 assists. And his best season came in 2005 to 2006 with the Hawks. He scored about 19 points a game 7 rebounds a game, and 3 assists a game. And his best year, like the best year of team success he had was with the Pacers in 2003 to 2004. He scored 13.3 points a game and came off the bench and was their sixth man, sort of like a Lamar Odom role with the Lakers. And the Pacers won 61 games that year, best in the East, and they lost in the conference finals to the Pistons, who went on to win the championship. But they had a really good year, and he was a big part of that. Like maybe around their fourth option or third option, they had Artest at that point, and Reggie Miller was still playing, and they had Jermaine O'Neal, but Al Harrington was right in there with those guys as one of the primary go-to guys. And I got another Pacer coming up after Al Harrington. My next guy I have is Jalen Rose. So Jalen Rose played a decent amount in the 90s, but he did play well into the 2000s, ultimately retiring in 2007. And he had a really good career, but I feel like he wasn't underrated, but initially coming out of college, he had a lot of expectations on him, and he underperformed his first couple of years in the league, never even reaching double digits in points per game. So people didn't forget about him, but they lowered their expectations a lot, but then he went on to have a really good career. And so I think because of that, because people initially started to lower their expectations, they don't really remember the good career he had as much, because he was slightly disappointing at the beginning. But his career stat line is 14 points a game, 3.5 rebounds, and 3.8 assists. And his best year came in 2002 to 2003, the year before for the Pistons, which was his last year, or it was his second to last, or it was his last year with the Pacers before he got traded for Ron Artest, but to the Bulls. But his stat line for that year was 22 points a game, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists a game. And the best team success he ever had with any team was with the Pacers in the year 1999 to 2000 season. The team had 56 wins, and they got to the finals and lost. And in this year, he scored about 18 points a game and played a pretty similar role that he did throughout his career with the Pacers, like a point forward. He played small forward, but he's really a point guard. A lot like if you think of Andre Iguodala today, like plays small forward, but is really the point guard of a team. He played a lot like that, I would say. Not as much athleticism, but the same basic mold as Iggy. So I always think that he deserved to be an All-Star. Moving on, I have the other guy that I was talking about who Al Harrington is like a bit, which is Lamar Odom. Lamar Odom, I feel like, is a guy who could have had a lot longer of a career in the NBA, but just because of a whole mess of reasons, didn't have that long of a career. But when he played and when he was in his prime, he was a very good player, contributed to championship teams, and I feel he was a lot like a Draymond Green in that he could not be a franchise player on his own, but if you plug him in with the right players around him, he is super effective and a lot better than he would be by himself. His career stat line is 13 points a game, 8 rebounds a game, and 4 assists a game. His best season came in 2003 to 2004, right before he got traded to the Lakers for Shaq, and that was when the Heat were really bad. It was D-Wade's rookie year, and Lamar was basically the go-to option on the team, which shows you that they weren't doing that great if he was like the primary scorer. He had 17.1 points a game. He had 10 rebounds a game and 4 assists a game. Now his assists is pretty low he's also a point forward. He's like 6'10", but he likes to bring the ball down the court and run the offense. So I think in that way he's a lot like Draymond in that he can be a triple-double threat and can also shoot threes and has good handles and everything. So I think that for that reason, his versatility should have gotten him into an All-Star game, especially in that year when his scoring was up quite a bit too. But I think the thing that held him back from being the All-Star nod that year would be the team's win total. They were not a good team that year. So the best season he ever had as far as team success was the Lakers in 2008 to 2009 season. They had 65 wins and won the championship, and he had 11 points a game as a sixth man and did really well and went on to win Sixth Man of the Year 2 years later and just had a really good time with the Lakers. Was very much the Draymond role that he plays with the Warriors right now. So I think that he definitely should have been an All-Star. Alright, so moving on. The next player I have is also another former Pacer, like we've had many on this list it seems like, Stephen Jackson. So he bounced around the league a decent amount. Probably you'd think of him primarily with the maybe Pacers, with the Mouse at the Palace, or the Warriors, or I think of him with the Bobcats, which is when he had one of his best seasons. His career line is 15 points a game, 4 rebounds a game, and 3 assists a game. And his best statistical season came in 2008 to 2009 with the Warriors. He had another one that was about equally as good in 2009 to 2010, but I picked this one because everything was just a little bit higher as far as his rebounds and assists. So in this 2008 to 2009 with the Warriors, this was after Baron Davis had left and Jason Richardson had left, and so it was basically like him and Monte Ellis as like the primary options on the team. So he was like the primary scorer. Him and Monte were like the co-leads. So he scored 20.7 points a game. He had 5.1 rebounds and 6.5 assists. So that's really high for him. He's not primarily thought of as a distributor, I don't think. I think of him as a scorer. So the 6.5, that's pretty high. And in 2009 and 2010, he got traded to the Bobcats, and he put up about 22 points a game. But his assists and rebounds were a lot lower. They were each at about 4 or 3. So that's why I said that 08 to 09 was a better season for him, because scoring was almost the same, but his other stats were a lot higher. And his best team success came in 2003 with the Spurs. The team won 60 games in the regular season, and they went on to win the championship. And he started for them and scored 12 points a game, which is a bit low, but you know, he's on a team with Ginobili, Parker, David Robinson, Tim Duncan, Steve Smith, Steve Kerr. So that was like a lot of firepower that he would have to contend with to get opportunities and points. So I don't think that you have to blame him for getting a lower point output than he would in any other season, because he's playing around a ton of other talented scorers. Next, moving on, is another Warriors player that played alongside Stephen Jackson on the We Believe Warriors team in 2006 to 2007, which is Jason Richardson. Okay, so I'm going to read off some stats here and then explain why I think he never got on the All-Star team. So his career line is 17 points a game, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists a game. And his best season statistically came in 2005 to 2006 with the Warriors. He had 23 points a game, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists a game. And his best team success came in 2009 to 2010 with the Suns. He was a starting shooting guard, and they won 54 games, and they reached the conference finals and lost to the Lakers. And he scored about 16 points a game for them that year, which is pretty good considering he was a bit older at the time. He's probably in his like around 33 years old or 32. The reason I think that Jason Richardson never made the All-Star team is because when I looked at his team success, when he was in his prime, let's say between 25 to 30, his teams were always doing terribly. The We Believe Warriors, who everyone thinks of as not maybe a great team, but like one of the most well-loved teams of all time, they were 42 and 40 and lost in the second round. The upset of the Mavericks was amazing, but the team itself was really bad on defense and had a lot of flaws to it, and so that was basic. That you could say that I put down the Suns 2010 as his best success with the team, but he wasn't really as big of a contributor on that team because you had Nash and Amari doing most of the heavy lifting, and he was the third option, but he just wasn't as big of a factor. There was also Grant Hill. He and Grant Hill played a very similar role, except he had a little more bounceability than Grant Hill, so he was more of a primary option. But he went on to the Magic after the Suns and didn't really do much at all, and he barely played at all for the 76ers when he was there during the process years. So, but if you look at these seasons where he scored 20 to 23 points a game for the Warriors and Charlotte mainly, all those years they were, besides the We Believe year, they were scoring or winning about 30 wins a year. So I don't want to call him a good stats, bad team guy, like a stat stuffer, but there is a correlation between his statistics and team success. So I'm not going to call him a bad team, good stats guy, but I think if somebody really wanted to make that argument, that they could. Alright, and moving on to my final guy. This is a guy who I'm not going to say had a sad career, but was a bit disappointing, and I think had a lot more potential that he didn't use in his playing days. So that would be Josh Smith, primarily thought of with the Atlanta Hawks or Detroit Pistons, or one miracle postseason run with the Houston Rockets in 2015. So his career line is about 15 points a game, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists. His best season was in 2011 to 2012. He scored 19 points a game, had about 10 rebounds a game, and 4 assists a game. And everyone that year had said he was a huge all-star snub because the team had been doing pretty decent and he didn't get in. And I think that he was. That's why I put him on this list. He was great in Atlanta, but when he tried to move to Detroit, it just sort of fell apart for him because he tried to play small forward and he was not fast enough or a good enough shooter. And he lost some of his athleticism with his age. So all those factors combined are just part of what started bringing him down. And so the year that he had the most team success was in 2009 to 2010 with the Hawks. They got to the second round with 53 regular season wins, and they lost to the Magic, which they seem to always be losing to the Magic or Cavs in the postseason during those 2000s years when LeBron was on the Cavs. In that year, he scored 16 points a game, which is pretty good, but they just were not able to get that far because they seem to always be destined to lose in the second round with Joe Johnson and him. Well, there you have it, guys. Those are 8 players that I thought all deserved to at one point or another be All-Stars, but maybe because of team success or injuries, they really did not get their fair due and did not get to be All-Stars. Or maybe even because they were overshadowed by other players on their own team. I think that might be the case with a guy like Jalen Rose or Lamar Odom, is that there were a lot of other good players on their team, and voters thought, we can't put 4 All-Stars from one team on the All-Star team, but that's just the unfortunate reality, is that people like to spread the wealth and don't like everyone from one team to be on the All-Star team. But a lot of these guys should have been All-Stars. I think that all of them should have, but just because of circumstance, they didn't get to be on the team. But they're all very talented, and I think all of them, in their best year, could have been at least the third, if not the second best player on a championship level team. They just were on the wrong team at the time. So there you have it. That's my list. I hope you liked the video, and have a good day. Alright, bye guys.